I gotta say, I love the concept. You're doing a great service to this industry, so I'm super excited to be here.
Creating a podcast video series that focuses on the amazing stories within our space. Hey, contact center and customer experience friends, welcome to episode 5 of Origins and Journeys. Today, our special guest is David Hadobas, who is the founder of CCNG, which is a professional peer networking organization focused on the contact center and customer experience market. David, welcome.
Thank you.
So as always, Origins and Journeys' intent is to inspire the next generation of CX and contact center professionals through telling stories of amazing people and their journey in this space. We want to change the narrative that contact center and customer service jobs are dead-end jobs. We just don't believe that. And it's been proven time and time again. I've personally met many entrepreneurs, executives, technology people in this space who started out as an agent or maybe a junior level leader as a supervisor or QA person and have grown in this industry. And we really feel like it's time we start celebrating these things. And the best way we know how is to tell stories and to bring great people like David on. So as always in O&J, there's no sales pitches. We're not here to sell you any products or sling anything. We're just simply here to tell stories and hopefully engage the upcoming generations in this market. I constantly get asked if you can share the content. Again, resounding yes, share it out. We love to hear stories of people, providing it to their agents in training, giving them an opportunity to learn that there really is growth opportunities in this market and you can get out whatever you want to put in. So with that being said, David, I know you've been in this space for a long time. It may be hard for you to remember, but take us back and tell us about your origin. So how did you get into this market?
Well, I appreciate that. I am old. Appreciate you pointing that out. Before I start, I want to say congrats to you guys for doing this, because from my point of view, what you're doing is you're shedding a light on the fact that contact center, customer care is the start of a career. And it can really go in a lot of different directions. And I suspect, Fred, the more people you speak to, the more directions you uncover of how their careers twisted and turned. So I hope it motivates some people to say, hey, this is step one in a journey, and I'm not pigeonholed with a headset and a cube.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, excuse my voice. So, a little bit about my background. I certainly didn't graduate with a degree and go into customer service. There was no such thing. I was a business grad, and I needed to do something after college. I wasn't really highly motivated to do anything. Work was, not high on my hit parade. Screwing off and having fun, socializing, skiing, and those things. Those were great, but I guess all that to say, I really didn't know what step one should be. I really didn't know where to start. So with a little bit of encouragement from my father, he suggested I look into sales and that I look into getting with a growth company. And in those days, back in 1980, you were talking about technology and healthcare. Side note on technology, at my age, when you came through college, you had to write programs. That was your computer science requirement. And the first one was such a disaster that I put it off, taking the second. I was required to take 3 as a business major. And I think I started with COBOL and then BASIC. And there was a third one in there that just escapes my memory. So in starting in the field of technology, thinking of computers immediately flashed back to that disastrous moment of trying to pass in a pass-fail. That's hard to fail in a pass-fail, and I was right there. So I said, I don't know what the other side is, telecom. I don't even know what that is, but that sounds like my pathway forward. So off I went with a growth company. Had an LA office, downtown Los Angeles, a company called Data Point. And there I was. So I was getting an education on what is telecom. And it was in an interesting time in the industry because we were changing the breakup of the Ma Bell system. And I'm not going to
Right.
go into all that, but suffice to say, it was a big chapter in the world of telephony. And some automation was pretty new into these customer care, customer service departments. And so I got exposed to that at a very early part of my career. And some of the applications were way cool. Princess Cruises, um, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and some of them were very, very manual. Maricopa County Auto License Bureau. But one thing they all had in common is that they lacked information. They didn't have reports. They didn't have dashboards. They didn't have intelligent routing. They didn't have any of that stuff. So I'm a guy that walks in and says, "Does this bucket of stuff look like it could help you?" And it was Star Wars. Like, holy cow! We don't know when the next call is coming, much less any queuing. So it was an interesting opportunity to step in and be a hero. You're really automating something that wasn't automated. So was I in sales or was I just the right guy at the right time with a pretty good product? I don't know. It's arguable. But I did learn something about myself in those early years. And that was that I really enjoyed meeting the people, learning their applications, meeting the teams that were involved, especially the frontline teams, and helping. And so that was kind of the foundation of me beginning to understand that I'm more of a service oriented person than a sales oriented person. What I mean by that is it didn't float my boat to go in, make the sale, sign a contract, and never be seen again. I was on the other end of the spectrum. I kind of wanted to get in, get to know what they were trying to do, really understand it, get to know these people, find out what their challenges were, and live with them over time. So that experience really brought me to understanding the value of having relationships or a network of people in the field, because an obvious example for a sales guy would be you make a successful sale and then you're talking to a prospect. You say, well, talk to my client over here, right? I mean, in essence, that's providing information or connection that's going to benefit, in with any luck, all three parties. But again, if I'm not doing my job, it steers them clear of making a mistake. So if my client isn't going to speak highly of what we do and how we do it, then that's not going to look good. I used to tell, and I'll just kind of summarize with this, I used to tell our customers, hey, we got great technology, and you know what? There's a lot of other great technology. Right now, we may have the forefront product, but we're going to get leapfrog. We got a great company, but there's a lot of good companies out there. But I'm going to tell you something. If you want this group of people, and specifically if you want me, then you're going to have to do business with my company and buy my product because I'm the unique qualifier. Now, if that has no value, well, then you're screwed, right? But, I always placed a high value on how much time and energy I was willing to do to go the extra mile to make sure they were satisfied. So why I tell that as part of my origin is because that really started to click with me how important these people represent. There, I got involved with a user group. The technology company I worked for had a user group, and I was blown away. I was thinking, all these people coming from all over the US with different applications, all learning from each other. Well, that was another factor in kind of showing me the value of networking and these relationships. The differentiator, I thought to myself, was it's too bad they're all using the same technology. What could they learn from each other if they were using different technology? So you have different vertical markets, different geographies, common platform. If you could remove the common platform and make it uncommon, now what would that look like? And that's where the aha moment came on to kind of launch an organization like that. We didn't know what it would be. We thought we might be an association. Quickly realized we didn't want to be an association. But we wanted to model the user group kind of concept. And so CCNG was really birthed in 1990 to be a misery loves company, a place for people to share what they were going through. And we were about to make another big change in the industry, and that was transitioning from analog technology into digital technology. And again, I'm no technology person, but I knew that that was a big shift. And so there were a lot of questions around making that transition, what it would look like, who did it successfully, who were the early adopters. So all that to say, I got this idea. Why don't we gather some people I know from my current position and invite them all to a meeting, and then say to them, if you could sit in a room of people like this, what would you talk about? And then I wrote on a grease board. It was hosted at IBM in Dallas, I remember. I wrote on a grease board for the better part of an hour and a half, whatever they wanted to talk about. If they wanted to talk about this, I wrote it down. And then when we stepped back and looked at that grease board, lo and behold, the issues were by and large people issues and process issues. They really weren't technology issues. These were not technologists. These were customer service people. So I said, okay, so where are you going to go to learn about this stuff? And in those days, really, it was trade shows and trade magazines. But that's not going to help you a lot when you're trying to tackle hiring or training or knowledge management or some of that stuff. So I said, if we could create an organization where you could meet with people like this regularly, would that be of value to you? That's how CCNG was birthed, mainly as a face-to-face, because it was the only tool in the bag at the time. So everything initially was started with my network. So once again, the value of taking something like the asset of a network and leveraging it to the benefit of others. It's not the 10 people it's the 10 people they know, which gives you the 100 people. That's 90 people you don't know. But through those 10, through that nucleus, you now are extended. LinkedIn's really helped us understand that concept.
Right.
So my connections, organic growth, gathering of people, started in Dallas, Fort Worth, went over to Phoenix, it did beautiful, went to Atlanta, it failed horribly, tried to understand why. We didn't have a lot of contacts, and so people had misconceptions of what they would get or where they would participate. Also went to San Francisco and failed, but we failed there because the quantity of industry people, dare I say the word vendors, far outweighed the end users. And when end users are in the minority, they get real quiet. They don't open up. When they're in the majority, you can't shut them up, right? So we realized that we've got to create an environment where people feel comfortable. And that's kind of the next piece, I think, to maintaining and developing successful relationships is trust.
Yeah.
I may be steering away from my origin in a traditional sense, but it is the journey that I came on that brought me to creating an organization like CCNG. And I wanted you to understand that this is really a foundation of people trying to help other people. And
Right.
if you could do that, might that pay dividends over time? And the answer is yes. Side note. You can't go into it trying to get something out of it. You have to go into it trying to help someone else. And if you lead with that, how can I help? Rather than what am I going to get from this? You'll have success tenfold. So over the years, we've seen a number of people that have struggled in being involved in this type of community. And almost to a person, it's because they couldn't put their hands on what they're getting from it. They kept trying to extract from it. This requires a give first, give value attitude or approach. And that has a lot of benefits, as I've cited, on a personal and a professional level. But on a professional level, no matter how many people you know, if someone says, oh, I see you're about to decide on X, you should talk to Bill just to make sure you don't step in the hole Bill stepped in. Everyone would say, give me the bill. right?
Yeah.
I don't want to have those problems. So it allows for more thorough decision making. Um, it's it's the it's the references that are not given to you. Why not? Well, we're not sure we want you to know that the product doesn't do this, or that you might have some of these challenges, or that no, that's with your level. But if you really want her to do the things you think you want her to do, you have to move up 3 levels, and there's a cost to that. So I think the other benefit of what I've learned of this developing a network is it allows you to tap a collective knowledge of what's in people's heads. That's not a Google search. So if I want to know what Aarde feels about this, I have to know Aarde. But you first have to understand that knowing people like Aarde or Jason or even Fred, is going to bring a broader perspective on whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I would also say that it allows you to lead as a person, Artie, and then share your knowledge because you're being asked your opinion, your objectives, your insights on a particular topic. So the personality comes across, the unsolicited. It's not a paid endorsement by any means, and all of these things give you a much sounder approach to business decisions. It also gives you a place to go back and say, hey, how would you have done this differently? So one thing that customer service is blessed with is a never-ending set of challenges. Tomorrow you could be great with your service today. Tomorrow's another day. We'll see how it goes, right? So everybody's trying to continually keep their game at a certain level, and having that group of peers that you can lean on, that you can turn to, that you can give back to, it's invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable. I did a recent, just a quick poll on LinkedIn.
David, are you there? I wanted to pause you. You got on a roll. Fred, I think, had a technical issue and dropped off. And that was amazing stuff. I have a ton of notes. I know Aarde was going to jump in.
Sure.
Go for it, Aarde. What did you want to start off with? There was so much in that. Like, here's all my notes.
I'm typing away too. I can see my eyes going down to the bottom right in my notepad. David, you talked a lot about network, and in your origin story of CCNG, bringing the network together. And this is in the age of, internet becoming something new and widely used. So tell us a little bit about what networking means to you. What's the difference between networking and network? Maybe define that a little bit for the audience, and then we'll jump right into this section about network.
Sure. That's a very good question because people kind of use them interchangeably. I see it this way. Your network are a group of people that you've cultivated through relationships. Networking is the act of assisting someone. CCNG's number one reason for existing came about because somebody said, hey, who do you know who I could talk to about X? That connection, let me think about that. You should talk to. That's networking, okay? Most people tend to think of networking as going out with your business cards and trying to sell or pitch something, maybe at a trade show. But really networking, as I see it, is that valuable connection, bringing two people together for the benefit of both. And that's different than having a professional network, if that makes sense.
So,
Totally
David, can you guys hear me?
Jason, you want to comment? Network versus networking, the verb versus the noun. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people think, all right, so my job is to network, and I've never been one of those people to kind of speed date the room and just hand out as many cards as I can and play the numbers game, right? Like if I just almost MLM mode, if I just talk to enough people and meet enough people and hand out enough cards, like I'm going to find somebody who wants to do business with me versus, the depth and like having that network of people where you're giving to them, you're helping them. And then, there's, like you said, there's only so many people you can actually culture relationships with. And so what's more important? Are you going for high volume and just, shotgun, blast, trying to hit a target with something? Or is it about like specific, kind of just focused and playing the long game, right? I feel like one is really the short game, like hunting versus farming, where it's like, all right, let me just get what I can get and kill what I can kill right in the moment. And the other is like, all right, how do I just build a farm and cultivate a farm for long-term success for everybody's benefit?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and add to that because there's some confusion that's come about with social media, which is about the accumulation of contacts, right? So again, I look at it this way. Why am I trying to build an audience? More often than not, it's because I want people to listen to me. So I have my own agenda. And that's not networking, right? And it's certainly not the way I see it. Again, the foundation of this is a valuable relationship. And think about it. I used to be asked to come into sales groups and, give some pearl of wisdom. And, they're the toughest audience in the world. Jason knows better than me. So what are you going to tell a bunch of people that are successful? To say, hey, if you knew everyone you ever knew, you probably would never have to cold call again. Well, why would you know that? Because you maintain the relationship. Who better to go to than someone who's enjoyed the project that you did together to say, who else could I help with this? That's the pathway forward. And that's a whole lot different than, as you pointed out, Jason, accumulating this vast, group of people and hoping something sticks.
Yeah, and I think where the challenge comes in is that so many people in sales, especially if they're in the first year or so of their career, they don't know if they're going to make it. They're in survival mode. They're trying to hit quota. They're trying to make sales. They're trying to make money. They're trying to be successful, right? And so they're in survival mode every day. If you don't think you're going to be alive in 6 months, then why would you care about relationships and long-term anything, right?
Very true. Very true.
You're not going to be in sales, I don't know if I'm going to make it in sales. I'll be here next week. I might get fired. So I can try to get something now and get deals now, or I can play the long game. And most people just can't. Again, they're in primal, like human survival mode in their sales career. And they're not thinking, oh, you know what? I'll be all right. I could play the long game.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that we do that with salespeople? It's almost a threaten your job ongoing. But if you went down to the service department, please God, don't leave. We need you, right? Right. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy, how we treat sales versus service.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I gotta jump in
and
there.
Who's looking at long term versus short term, right? Like who's long term minded and they're just like set, or short term and like let's just get in, get out, or I don't even know if I'll be around long term.
Yeah, I gotta jump in there on the support side too. And you brought up a good point. Support's kind of like farming. You're in it to make sure that the plant doesn't die, it gets enough sunlight, it gets enough water. You're not hunting. You're not like, all right, pick up the phone, get the sale done, upsell, cross-sell, hang up. Not necessarily all the time. Some support centers are like that. But on this customer experience side, it's all about keeping them within your network. It's like a retention strategy. It's like the bucket is full of water, or the company is full of customers. Let's try to prevent leakage. Let's try to prevent evaporation. Of course, some of that's natural. You can't prevent it. But how can you, as a customer service professional, keep your network, and not bleed it out to your competitor who is trying to poach or find your network and grab them? So network the word networker is different to different types of people within organizations, and I'd love to call that out.
Great point.
So I apologize, guys. I had a little technical difficulty. I had to bounce in and out. I am back. So, David, you talked so long that my system just shut down. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect.
Accomplished goal. I want to pause us and take a step back. So I want to first, David, thank you for your origin story. Obviously, you started out as an agent. You came into sales, and you were actually on the phones, right? Genuinely, that's what you.
Prior to my career starting, yeah, I mean, I had an opportunity to be a telemarketing guy. I think probably we all did at some point, right? That was a complete and total disaster, but yes.
Yeah. And you worked your way up, you had that aha moment, you realized at the user group that if you could emulate that, you built, and then hence you built CCNG with this idea of a peer-to-peer model, which I love. But one of the reasons why it made a lot of sense to have you on is this subject in particular is about networking, right? And you guys kind of dove into it in my absence. Thank you. But I want to level set real quick and just get your guys' take on something, and then we'll dive down into the networking discussion. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how critical, David, do you believe that creating a personal and professional brand is today for individuals that are listening? We'll scale of 1 to 10, personal and professional.
Yeah, I think on a personal level, again, I have the benefit of hindsight now. So I look back and say, Aarde and I have the same challenge. You don't run away from a name like Aarde's or like mine, Hadobas, right? So perhaps we had a different perspective when we got started because we knew we better do the job right because people were going to remember who you are. So I think on a personal brand level, that's a good guiding light. Always do a job that you're proud that someone else will speak to you in a positive light. And I think as you build your network and your networking, you can call upon, well, I don't know what David's doing these days, but I can tell you what, the character of the individual, blah, 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 blah. So people want to do business with people that they like and trust. So I think from a personal brand, networking and network is critical to developing that brand. But on a professional level, again, to Jason's point, I'm brand new. I don't have a network. Well, you know what? You're going to get started. You're going to find someone, and that someone will lead you to someone. Tending to that network garden, if you will, over time will pay dividends that you can't even begin to imagine as you twist and turn through your journey of your career. Imagine losing your job. Do you want to pick up a phone book, or do you want to pick up your list of people that you know and know you and ask them for assistance? So network on a professional level is critical. It's absolutely critical. I think gone are the days where you can just show up, know the product, and be dropped in somewhere and have success, long-term success. You might have a quick hit or something, but
Right.
So building that network. And again, now you say, well, wait a minute, what do I get out of the industry? Well, a good colleague and friend that got out of customer care and got into real estate. Guess what? He was pretty successful and is in real estate. And I'm pretty darn sure he leveraged that network. So it's not a direct answer, but 1 to 10 scale, they both are 10s for different reasons.
Okay. So Aarde, what do you think? 1 to 10, personal, professional?
I think 10 for both. I mean, we're biased, all the people on this podcast. I mean, anyone who is either a host or a guest of a podcast or is willing to step up on front of a crowd, even if it's a crowd of 2 people, to talk about what they know off the top of their head. They know the value of networking. So they're going to just give you a 10 or 11 or a 12 out of 10 each time for both of those. Although some of the people who maybe are a little bit more introverted or don't want to share their story or a little bit timid to share their story, or maybe that flower hasn't blossomed for them yet, they'll give you a lower ranking. For the advice to the people watching who are a little timid, I recommend doing it. And start small. Don't sign up to do a webinar with 8,000 people watching and it's outside of your subject matter expertise. Start small. Lead a meeting with your peers. Go to work. Lead a Zoom meeting. Talk to people who are good at public speaking. Go to Toastmasters, where it's a safe space where you can start doing speeches. the more output you give to your network, the more you're going to receive from your greater network. And I know, David, you at CCNG, you kind of say that as well. The more you give to the community, the more you're going to get back. The more the community is just going to naturally gravitate and feed itself. So I'd say 11 out of 10 for both categories.
All right, Jason, how about you?
Obviously, and like Aarde said, like we're a different group, that's all on here, and when different from what others might think, but we all think about the same, which is the personal branding and the professional branding. I think in this day and age, it has to be a 10 or more for both, because no matter what you do, even if you work at a company, people, before they even talk to you, before they network with you, before they go to a conference, I'm researching everyone that's going to be on that conference, before they talk to you about on a sales call or a demo, people are using the internet. Nobody's just going in blind anymore. And so they're looking up the company and they're looking up you. And so your personal branding, your professional branding has to be important, has to be something you focus on. Even if you're an account executive or an SDR at a company, you have to either be intentional and be focused on it, or be aware and be afraid of what you've posted online that may come back to haunt you because of what you thought no one was going to find. For me, like, I focus on both, but then there's also that interesting transition, which is, all right, so focusing on the personal brand and the professional brand, which is the same thing, especially on LinkedIn. But as I grow my company, as I bring in other people to work in the company, how do I transition to people not just wanting to hire me to help them, but hire the company and the brand to help them? And where is that intersection, which I think is always a interesting / tough transition to make as well. When you're small, then it's all about both, right? Yeah, definitely
so,
10.
I mean, obviously, logically, I'd say 11 for both of them. I think the one thing I would add is that personal branding, in my mind, is you identify something that you absolutely are passionate about, or to do it the right way, in my opinion. You find something. I don't care if it's fishing, cars, whatever you're passionate about, and you figure out a way to blend your passions into some kind of conversation to create a relationship, right? We all do it. We shake hands. Hey, how you doing? Most of us don't even want to get into business right away. If you're skilled at building, networks, you want to talk about and understand personal, what's their personal brand? How do you got kids? What do you like to do for fun? What are the things that really drive you outside of work? And then get to the professional. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because your personal is just your passion project, right? You got to get back to professional eventually. And branding for that is just as critical. But I think that's more... it's an interesting dichotomy. I think it's the same challenge that you're going through right now, Jason, which is, how do I convert my personal now into business, and how do I focus it on the brand's reputation versus my personal? And here's what I would say to the individuals coming up. You're going to carry your personal brand everywhere. Your business is going to have its professional brand, but continue to maintain that personal focus and understand that you still own your personal brand. It's what you do, who you are, what drives you, what makes you passionate. And there's plenty of people out there that are just like you. But figure out how to blend that back. And it's the challenge that we all go through, right? It's the thing that is difficult, going from that personal to professional when it comes to especially social media. But all great points. So, all right. So we all believe that obviously personal and professional branding is critical in today's world. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what are some strategies, what are some things that we all do today that are effective in the market, other than get together, shake hands, kiss babies, and do video podcasts, right? I mean, we all obviously do that. So let's start out, Jason. Why don't you kick us off on this one? What are some things that you're finding, that has maybe shifted or changed, or that really work for you in today's world, both digitally and in person?
Who was that pointed at? You cut out.
Jason.
I think it's something that David mentioned earlier, which is to give especially without expectation, giving without the need to get. One of the things that I found that works really well is just giving and connecting people and putting people together for their benefit and really playing that long game. It's tough because a lot of times I can still feel like I'm giving to get, and or when people do it to me, I'm like, all right, like what's the catch? Like you're being nice to me, you're giving, but you just have to have faith. I think it's also about just overwhelming amount of content. And finding different ways to promote people and do things together, especially when it comes to network. It's like, how do you just do so much and give so much out there such that when you walk into a room or an event, people know you, they trust you, they understand what you do. And then you're just starting off at a higher place where you can, build that relationship even quicker.
Right. How about you, Aarde?
I'll jump on top of that if you
go ahead.
if you don't mind, because you made me think of a couple of things. So again, we're talking about people in their business journey as they're developing their network, and some things that are working to extend and expand that. Proactively making a conscious effort to assist. So I just met Jason. I know a little bit about his business. I've heard a little bit about some of the challenges. I came across a blog. I'm going to send it over to him. Hey, I was thinking about you and thinking about some of the things you said. Hope this might be of benefit to you. Okay. Whether it is, it's probably not going to be earth shattering or change his life. But at the end of the day, the message is he cares enough to contribute, to make an effort to try and help me. That's what you do in a relationship. So as you have these 10 people that you know, or 20 or 200, obviously, Jason, you mentioned earlier, you can't do this with everyone. You start narrowing it down to the people who are in your field of your sphere of knowledge, where they are like you, that would benefit from the things that you have knowledge of. And how can you start thinking about how can you contribute to them, whether it's inviting them to participate in a group, whether it's sending content to them, whatever it is to the outreach, it's on you to make the conscious effort to help. And as you do that, you're going to find more and more people start reacting to you differently. They'll start reciprocating, and that helps grow and expand and extend what you're trying to accomplish with your personal brand into your business brand.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to add that I have found as a really good strategy, and I struggle with calling it that because I don't want it to feel like it's a negative intention. But I learned this early in the pandemic, where I met with somebody. We networked through a virtual conference, and then we got on a Zoom call. And at the end, he said, "Hey, I read a study that said it takes 3 to 4 hours of intentional quality time together with somebody before they become top of mind." And so we just finished an hour-long Zoom call. He said, "Hey, let's do this. If we want, let's set 1 hour a month and let's do it for 4 months. And then at the end of that, we'll know if we really vibe together, we'll be top of mind. And then as opportunities come up, then you're thinking of that person and how you can help them." And then what I did was I did kind of like what David's been talking about with the quality over the quantity, where there's people that I want to have relationships with. And instead of going really wide and trying to network with the world, it's like, all right, who are the people I can just keep meeting? I mean, that's basically how Fred and I's relationship developed, was let's just keep meeting and talking and let's grow this without any destination, but let's just put in that time and then see where it goes. And I think that's really important because, and again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, but you have to play the long game. But when you do that, then even what you're talking about, David, is when something comes up, I'm thinking, oh, this article would be great for Fred. Like, I know Fred well enough that, all right, I know to point him this direction or connect him with this person or whatever that looks like.
Right.
Yeah. And
how about you,
I'll
Aarde?
jump in. I'll jump in a little bit. You guys had amazing points. I agree with all of them. I'm just going to add a little color to a little different viewpoint here. Try to get beyond the surface level questions. So whenever you're hanging out with someone, whether it's in person or virtually, you usually ask the first 3 questions. What's your name? Where are you from? And what do you do? And that is very surface level. I could go on LinkedIn. I could find all that information. I could probably Google it if you've got some, Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Try to ask more in-depth questions. So instead of, what's your name? It's like, tell me about the origin of your name. Like, your last name's really cool. Where's that from? Your first name, is that short for something? Is that long? Why did your parents name you that? Do you have a middle name? Let's dive into that. Or the where you're from. Instead of where you're from, it should be why do you live there? Where did you go to school? How many times have you moved in the last 10 years? Try to get in depth with your questions as opposed to surface level. The what you do one, oh my God, I hate answering that. It's like, oh, what do you do for a living? I don't know. Consulting. I don't know. I talk to people. I'm on podcasts. Whatever it is. That's kind of surface level boring. It's more of the why do you do what you do? Do you enjoy doing it? What keeps you up at night? What gets you up in the morning? Those types of questions. And to Jason, to your point, sometimes forcibly you have to have 4 hours under your belt with someone to get beyond the surface level questions. It's the that awkward silence of like you and the other person in the room, or you and the other person at a bar sitting next to each other. It's like, oh well, I got to ask more than just what do you do for a living? Oh cool, you replaster pools. Like what? Why do you do that? You got to get more in depth. So I would recommend, if you're starting out, you want to build your network. Of course, try to find the right people that you mesh with, but try to get beyond that surface level. If you don't get in depth with your questioning, that network, there's not going to be a bond. You're not going to have common ground to stand on.
Yeah,
Good point.
well,
You're taking that element of trust, and to Jason's point, it takes time to develop trust. And to Aarde's point, you got to get beyond the what's your favorite color to have any value, to be able to deliver any value, right? So some people it's 4 hours, some people it's 40 minutes. And then when you add, Aarde, your point of, am I talking to an introvert or am I talking to an extrovert? Because an introvert is going to be very resistant to open up and to let that trust evolve. So I'll just come back to my point. It's on you to continue to make the effort.
yeah, I think I personally approach it with the idea that you can learn from everybody, first of all. There isn't anybody that can't teach you something. And everybody has value. Everybody has their own story, much like what we're doing here. And when I ask a question like of somebody like any one of you three, or any one of the guests we'll probably ever have on, when I ask a question like, how are you doing? I genuinely want to hear the answer. So learning how to be, I mean, not just surface level, oh, I'm good. I want to know, I care, and I want to know how you're doing. And approaching networking like anything in life, I mean, you got to put in the work and understand that people want to tell and want to share, and you should care to listen. And listen, don't just wait for your turn to say the next thing. I mean, genuinely, you want to build a real network of people like us that will, I mean, David, Jason, Aarde could call me, text me day, night, weekend, and I'd get back to them immediately. And if they needed me, that's the kind of thing that takes time.
Which reminds me, you haven't responded to my email. It's bad time to bring it up.
You probably went to spam, David. I'm just saying. I mean,
Probably.
That's fair.
So, I mean, that's, to me, that's the point of building relationships, is to create these people that you can call on, right? And if you approach it that way, genuinely, authentically, and you figure out how to be that person, for other people and to give, it'll naturally happen. It doesn't happen overnight, right? I mean, you got to put in the work. I don't know. That's just me. That's just the way.
No,
I didn't always.
Fred,
approach
you have some solid points, and I keep coming back to this vision of this young person, Jason, pointing out, I'm just getting started. You continually contribute. You're going to find yourself in a position where they're asking you, right? Yeah. So, can you help me with this? That's the position you want to be in. You do not want to be always in a position of, I think I heard you, I can do that for you, right? Well, you and a whole lot of other people that say they can. You want to have invested the time to earn the trust so that they're saying, what do you think about X? Where should I go for X? or what are some of the things that you could tell me or introduce me to other people? The beauty of networking is that when people get it, it's contagious.
Hmm.
It's like crabgrass, right? I mean, they start thinking, that's an interesting question. I think I might know someone. And next thing you know, they're doing exactly what you built the concept of networking around. Conversely, those that don't get it, don't. I was asked by a gentleman the other day, we were in a meeting and he was struggling. And I said, well, just go, just listen. The question that he couldn't answer was he was not willing to put anything into it, but was constantly looking for how to get something out of it. And so I finally asked him, I said, well, what'd you put in? And he looked at me with a blank stare. What do you mean put something in? Well, if you're not contributing, how do you expect people? Okay, back it up, dude. Have you ever been to a parent-teacher conference? I mean, you ever met other parents, right? It wasn't hard. You said, who's your kid? And, do they like math? My kid sucks in math. And you find this common ground and you're talking. It's the same thing. Why is it you struggle in a business but take on this different persona?
But David, here's the thing. And if you've ever been to a school and a parent-teacher conference or the world, people like to talk about themselves and size everybody up and then brag about their own stuff. Kind of like what Aarde was talking about earlier of like not liking the like, hey, what do you do for a living? Because especially in with men, that's how we rank each other and look at each other and be like, oh, what do you do? Oh, okay. Well, now I'm going to put you in this priority and you go here in my thought process and value of you versus others. And then of course, everyone's only talking about the highlights and they like talking about themselves. And so I think that when you talk about that, David, where people are just taking instead of giving, they're stuck in that mode because they're just trying to protect their fiefdom, if you will.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the opposite. For an introvert, what do you do for a living? They'll downplay it. They may be like a senior customer care who saves the company millions of dollars and they're like integral part of the organization. And they'll say, oh yeah, I just help people, in support. Like they'll downplay
I work for the company.
Yeah, I work for company XYZ. I'm on the support team. I answer calls all day. Just downplay it because, they either don't want to have that like title or want to make other people feel inferior in that instance, or they're embarrassed to say it. And I'll bring this part up because I think we said it in the past. A lot of contact center professionals, each sales side, customer service side, it's really hard for them to wear that as a badge. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I just answer phones all day, or oh, I make calls all day or answer emails all day. It's not as prideful as some of the other illustrious roles that may be out there in the world.
Yeah, it's humans are funny, right? We're messy. We're all different, but I mean, I think we've all said it in our own ways, come authentic, build relationships, do it for the reason to provide. And it will come back. And the funny thing is, it works the same way for businesses. I mean, how many businesses out there just provide value? And guess what? The easiest, Jason, you tell me, you're the sales expert, but every sales organization I've ever been in, the easiest lead to close is the inbound. Am I right?
Always. And they will always come back if you provide value genuinely, authentically. So with that, I want to keep us moving ahead. I want to talk about the future of networking. And David, I want you to start out this one because I know we obviously have gone through the pandemic. Things shifted to virtual. Now we're all celebrating being back live and in person and going to events. What's the future of networking look like for the younger people just getting started? What do you see, David, for not just CCNG, but in general? What do you see the future of networking?
Sure. And, I've been exposed to this a little bit. So I have 3 kids all in their 20s, kind of starting their careers. Even though they're very different and in different careers. One works for a university on campus at a university. One is a school teacher in the 5th grade. You're like, what does a 5th grade school teacher need to network? And then, I have my son who's professional in the athletics and nutrition and that field. Each of them have no idea where the next big step's going to be, right? Just don't know. And spending time, in my son's case, LinkedIn, right? He knows 10 people. Spending time developing that. I think that's a big given. I don't think kids, in fact, I don't know. Aarde, you might know, being the younger member of our panel today, that LinkedIn is actually brought into the business school. They're actually talking about that. And I know you go back to campus, you're involved with UCI. So I think that's probably, it seems logical, that would be part of the normal conversation. So I think that's kind of table stakes. Fred, to your point of virtual, I think that there's has been this blend, this mashup prior to the pandemic. I think certainly by older people, I can say that because there was a bit of a resistance to this video, right? Podcast, maybe webinar was certainly in vogue, but Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, all this stuff, no, not so much. Now we've come over that hump. And so I think that observing, participating, and seeing these things, you have 4 senior level folks. If you're watching or listening to this, that's 4 people that have just basically said to you they would be more than happy to help you. So being involved in dialing into digital content where you can personalize it, where you can relate to those people, possibly create a relationship or an outreach, that's invaluable. So I think the pandemic is mashed up the old school of just social, if you will, networking through LinkedIn and the traditional methods with visually and virtually getting to know a bit about people and help that extend your network. Don't know if that answers the question, but there's some thoughts.
Yeah, so you see it as a mashup between digital and in person. What about specifically actually industry events? I mean, do you see the acceleration of in person now that we're back, or do you see this as kind of a people are just excited that we're back in person, and that's why we're seeing an influx of people going on, on site to the events? But that'll pull back eventually.
Yeah, I know. Dreamforce aside, right? Like whatever they had, 700 million people show up. But
yeah.
I was getting ready to mention this, Jason. Thank you for cutting me off. I was going because I didn't see Fred, and I wasn't sure if Fred was going to return or he had a dentist appointment or something happened in the middle of us. But in that little poll that I did, it was, do you get your insights and information by reading, by observing, listening, watching, whatever, or by meeting face-to-face? And interesting, I think 2 years ago, had we done that, it would have been overwhelmingly face-to-face.
Right.
And now it's shifted to downloading content, if you will, reading it and downloading it, followed closely by meeting. I think both are required. I think the purpose of getting together face by face has changed. And I think if the vendor community makes the shift to say, it's about, demoing product, it's about meeting people, it's about getting people to meet people, they're going to have a lot of success. But going to gather information, not so much. If you're just, and this is my opinion, dirty little secret, why are the trade shows in Vegas and Orlando? Easiest 2 places to get people to go to, especially if they bug out of the conference, right? So if I'm the boss and I'm saying, wait a minute, you got to go all the way to Vegas to learn about a headset? I'm kind of questioning that, right? So I think these days there's a different purpose for the face-to-face, and it is more personal, but it is the key to meeting people and developing relationships. So it has high value, but you got to think through what's the purpose of the face-to-face.
Yeah, fair.
Fred, I'll go next because David, you hit on so many great topics. I agree. I think the traditional trade show, 1 week long in Vegas, you got to raise, I don't know, $5,000 in headcount budget or whatever to be able to send one person to it, or maybe 2 from your team. And then, of course, they're not working while they're there, whether they're at the conference or not, or if they're bugging out and playing slots at the slot machine. But you're losing productivity. You're not really gaining much. So in my mind, that trade show environment is going to go away soon. It's still there. It's still lingering. It's just holding on, barely grasping. But those types of conferences, in my mind, are very wide and shallow from a networking perspective. You're casting a wide net. You're not. It's very shallow. It's not very deep. You're not going to get a lot out of it. Whereas what I think people want, or at least this is where I think the consumer market, the people who would be targets for those trade shows, they want more narrow and deep. Because anyone out there can Google, best headset or what are the 20 headsets. So they already kind of know what their short list is. They don't need to go to a conference where there's 20 vendors when they know there's only 3 of them they want to talk to. And they don't need to spend 3 to 4 to 5 days and $4,000 to do that. They'd rather have a very narrow and deep conversation. So just have a small micro demo or just talk to that one person or those 3 companies that sell headsets. And I know I'm giving the sales technology example, but it also has to do with networking. Like if I need to talk to someone who is an expert in knowledge-centered support, which is like a contact center best practice, has nothing to do with technology per se. It's really more of a process. I need to talk to like 2 or 3 people who are smart. I don't need to go to a conference and then try to talk to 100 or 1,000 people who kind of barely know KCS. It's better to just go to the source and find 1 or 2. So I'd say it's wide and shallow today, and people are looking for narrow and deep relationships.
Interesting. And we kind of see that shift, and I'll come back to that. But first, Jason, what do you see for the future of networking?
So if we're talking about the future of networking and in person, I mean, I think the pandemic briefly showed most people that they didn't have to go to a conference. They didn't have to fly to a potential client's city to then sit down in a meeting to then try to earn new business. That, we could all scale our time much better with back-to-back video meetings and phone calls and get stuff done. But I think it misses the mark. And, this is the kind of stuff that David is focused on, where the relationship building takes so much longer. Like the 15 minutes I could spend in person with somebody versus the hours I was talking about that it takes to build that relationship. It's just a magnitude quicker and easier to build that trust in person, or to know if you like that person or not. Like that Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink, and talks about how we just know in an instant whether we like somebody or not, if we trust them or not. So I think there's some of that. I think when it comes to the conferences, I think the biggest thing that I see, and where I think the value still is for conferences, trade shows, that kind of stuff, is the kind of people who are looking to make their company or themselves better. It's not about, all right, let me go there to learn about a headset. It's more of, I don't know what I don't know. And I go to that conference to figure out what I don't know, because I can't even search it. I can't even search what's a good headset because I don't even know what my issue is or how to solve it, right? And so you need this like clearinghouse of a place where you can go and then do that. I think the other big value, and I've talked to a lot of people over the last 2 years, is during and then slightly after the pandemic, is they go to a lot of conferences because that's the best place that all their clients are in. And then they don't even care about meeting new people or going to the trade show booths or the sessions. It's just a one-stop shop for maintaining relationships and keeping the ones that they have. And so it's a lot about that. And I think that's important. And then the third category, I think this is always tough, is always the key, is that no matter what, if you want to build relationships and perspective, like business, like on a biz dev side, there are people who will not respond to emails, to phone calls. They're not on LinkedIn. They're busy putting out fires. They're hiding from people, trying to sell them stuff. And sometimes you just got to go and you got to be there in person to break through that wall and, start those relationships off. So I think there's always going to be those components, and less of, hey, let me just go see what cool headset or see what the latest CRM is trying to tell me I need right now.
Yeah. So, when I look at the future of networking, obviously, the digital side, if you're not on LinkedIn, if you're not figuring out other methods of networking digitally, first of all, you're way behind, right? We were doing that pre-pandemic. It accelerated during the pandemic. Everybody and their dog is now a LinkedIn expert, and so there's the digital side is going to continue. I think the value and quality, digital events will absolutely still continue because some people just can't get away. We know this job. I mean, I ran a center. To get away for more than a couple of days at a shot is damn near impossible. So I think that's one thing that will affect and impact the premise events is they'll be shorter. I think, Aarde, your statement of, the week-long events, people aren't going to fly in for a week. The event may be a week long, but they'll only come in for a couple of days. And that's why pre-event, I mean, it's been best practices forever, but now it's even more essential at pre-events, you have your meetings, as many as you can, pre-scheduled. Set up the people that are going to be there and make sure that you're getting FaceTime with them. Because, Jason, you're absolutely right. The FaceTime is where you build a relationship quickly. And if you like this person digitally and you get to meet them in person, like Jason and I did, then it was just the deal was done. It was sealed right on the spot when I shook his hand.
Hey, Fred, can I add something to that, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Because based on my statement, I don't want people to think I'm down on face-to-face. I think the face-to-face is evolving. We for 20 plus years have done 2 to 3 hour meetings with a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 people. So I think those types of things, wherever you find them, wherever you find your peers, so that's a great question. Hey, I was thinking of going to a meeting. Where do you go to find out this kind of information? That's here to stay. And that you can get all these things that you guys have talked about, the value of face-to-face. On the other end of the spectrum, the week-long show, I would say the exception to that is international. So I'm coming in from Hong Kong, or I'm going to Hong Kong. I'm not going for 12 hours, right? I'm probably going to have an extended stay. So it might be interesting to see that the percentage of people that are attending these conferences, full conferences, are more of the international flavor and not the domestic. Said differently, not local to the show, but further away from the show. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
That's interesting. And now that you say that, all my people over the pond, when they come across to the States, they're usually mixing in 3 to 4 cities because they're visiting, clients, partners, whatever in each individual city with their whole trip. So they're mixing it in. But I mean, I'd like to get you guys' take on this. I think the modern trade show, they have to do a better job at creating and bringing in great content, not vendors up there demoing their product because, only a handful of people are going to show and most of them are going to be from the vendor. And really bringing great content. I think if you look at the shows and events that are big in our country, in the U.S. at least, that I've been to, they have great speakers and great value to the audience. And sometimes they have breakout groups that go deep, instead of saying that surface level, like you were saying, Aarde. I mean, I really think that it's up to the organizations. Let me rephrase that. I think the ones that will win in the future are the ones who figure out that providing a reason beyond just the face-to-face to make that trip is going to be the winners of the overall show, concept in our industry. I think they just got to get better. They can't just put vendors up on stage all day long and expect people to sit in the rooms in the breakout sessions with them. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the bar's been raised. If I can get all this stuff virtually, well, then I better be able to get the content that I'm not getting virtually. The bar has been raised. One metric I always look at is, okay, here's the cast of characters. We got 50 speakers, whatever that looks like. How many of them are like me, operations folks, and how many are not? And all too often, it's easier to mail in an agenda with consultants and vendors, no offense to anyone, than it is to go get the VP of care from a telecom company or a healthcare company. So I always find those as high value opportunities, and I look for as many of them in an agenda before I would ever commit to going to something.
Yeah. And for me, like I've noticed that that what I can't stand is those you're talking about, Fred, which is the thinly veiled sales pitch, or just not even thinly veiled, where it's just literally a infomercial, like at a home show. All of a sudden, this person's on stage because they paid for it. And I think what's interesting though is that most people, there's enough content out there, right? Like we can all access the content. And I think to David's point, what's fascinating is more of the panel discussions where you know what you're going to get is the interactions that you can't get online, right? Like I could get Aarde's contact, get Fred's contact, get David's content, but like you mash everyone together, which is what makes this kind of a show special. Is like you can't get this anywhere else. What's fascinating is I speak at a bunch of different conferences. Some of them that I speak at literally won't let me on stage, to David's point, because they don't let consultants on the stage, even pay to play. They still don't, because they know what's going to happen, and then they have to let everyone on because they have to be fair. And so literally the only way for me to do it is if I bring brands with me. If I bring companies and I host a panel, all of a sudden it's a different thing, because it's not promotional and they want the value from that company. They want that business leader sharing their value, their secrets, their gold nuggets. Cause they don't want to make it a sales program, because then no one will go to sessions, and then people won't even buy a ticket, and they'll just hang out in the lobby and network instead of actually attending the conference.
Right. Aarde?
I was gonna say that exact point. I've learned more at conference bars and happy hours and dinners, small group sessions with people, than actually at the conference. And that's just because you use the conference to get everyone in the same spot, Vegas, for example. Then you go to the trade show floor to meet up with the people that you haven't seen in a long time, like Fred. The last time we saw each other face to face was at a conference. But it wasn't in a session. It wasn't that we were learning. It was oh, hey, what are you doing for happy hour later? Let's catch up. And then in that happy hour with, you, me, and 5 other people, it's like-minded people, birds of a feather, getting together and just chatting openly without an agenda, without slideware, without no one wants to sell anyone anything. It's all like, hey, how are your kids? Did you go to softball practice? What's the weather like this time of year? I remember you like snowboarding. Is there any snowboarding happening? Things like that. Those types of conversations. And then I think, Jason, you said this either in a pre-show call or on one of the previous ones. Then later, those conversations and that little networking turns into the, oh, wait, that's right. You are top of mind. I forgot. I've got someone who you need to talk to. And that can turn into a potential alignment, or another network person that you can network with, or a sale or a deal. I see more value in the extracurricular stuff, small session, unprepared, unplanned, than the more structured. And to answer your question, Fred, if a trade show can harness the power of that and keep it within their 4 walls, help administer and create those types of conversations and environment without it being salesy, I think they'll win. I think that's where I would go.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, this has been an awesome session. Once again, David, thank you. I mean, it's been great having you on. For those people watching, build your network. Take your time, build relationships, and then you too can text anyone at the middle of the night and ask for bail money. No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. As always, from Jason, Aarde, and I, we appreciate you all. David, again, thank you. And we'll see you again on the next episode of Origins and Journeys. Take care.
Thank you.